everybody, it's Suspense. As promised a few weeks ago in my first Otherside theory video, I'm going to go over every message written in Blood God that I could find. If you haven't guessed already, I am teaching myself how to read and write in Blood God currently, and I do have the alphabet copied down in my most used sketchbook because sometimes they get certain letters mixed up, and I'm not entirely good at it yet. However, I think I did translate everything correctly, so let's jump right in. To start, I did go into Adam Apple's website and try to sneak around and find anything hidden, like invisible text, but I was unable to find anything except something I had entirely missed at first. On the shop page, there's at least a dozen of words and phrases I had originally not seen yet. But for the sake of lore and timelines, because we know how sometimes that gets messed up, I'm going to start with Adam Apple's oldest videos to his latest, then move on to the website. Also, for the sake of your ears, I'm going to refer to Dan and George mainly as the duo, so you don't have to hear their names over and over and over again. The first phrases I'm going to cover are the ones that appeared in his first ever video, The Story Begins, which released on May 4th of 2025, roughly 9 months ago. Dan seemingly falls off a cliff while adventuring and finds an ancient building. Upon walking into it, we immediately get hit with Blood God words on the wall, and then a few seconds later, a prophecy of sorts with Dan, George, and Twig. Of course, this is very lore heavy already, and you don't need to translate anything to get right off the bat that the duo are tied with Twig and his drama in some way. But if you translate the phrases, the first image seemingly says, "The evil is not what it seems to be, it has ulterior motives," which instantly implies that Twig isn't one of those people who are evil for the sake of being evil, but he has a deeper meaning of attacking the duo, which we have already seen to be that Twig wants to recreate the pantheon of blood gods using human souls, these souls just so happening to be the duos. But wait, who's writing all this? Some sort of future-seeing blood god, or maybe something else entirely? If we take a closer look on the outside of the building, we see that there is actually nothing except white pillars. So we can theorize that maybe the people who built this weren't even blood gods at all, and they could have been humans who learned the language, like me, a group of cryptids trying to warn others about some events going to happen later in the world, or maybe some other beings we have yet to know about. But whoever they were, kudos to them, because that drawing is peak. Moving on to the phrases above the peak drawing. If I translated it correctly, it says, "They who find the message will free the late king." Okay, hold up. What? First off, straight from the drawing, we see George has a crown over his head. Big symbolism there. Then the words, "free the late king." This is actually insane. Hold up. Right, let's break it down step by step. First off, the phrase, "they who find the message will free the late king." Well, all blood gods except Twig are dead, and this alone implies that Twig could have been, and maybe still is, a blood god ruler or king. This alone opens up a whole theory called the king theory that I'll brief you guys on quickly. This is implying that Twig was a king and a late king, which implies even more that their race has been dead for a very long time, or Twig has been a king for a long time. Then there is so much about his character and backstory that we don't know about, but can guess off from this one phrase. Twig being a king establishes a sort of powerful physique to him, possibly making all cryptids feel oppressed by him if they even know he's alive. Twig is also known to be a little shorty in his community, and him ruling feels like a nod to well-known, too young for the throne kings from history. Like Nero, for example, a teenager when he claimed the throne, or King Tut, who was literally not even double digits when he became pharaoh. This could imply that Twig, being a ruler, wasn't a very good one, and could be part of the reason why all the blood gods died in the first place. Even more proof that this could be real. In a video titled, "Is He Truly Evil, Though?", one of Twig's notes says, "may or may not have ended a whole civilization," which could be an even bigger hint that he was one of those conqueror kings who try to take over smaller nations or cities and most frequently win. Then we've got the drawing of George with the floating crown. Could this mean that if Twig successfully turns George into a blood god, he'd become the next ruler, possibly overthrowing Twig? This is a bit far-fetched, but could still very likely be the actual story. Real quick, free the late king. Free? Like, free him from his throne? Or maybe, just maybe, free him from his life. The only other video I had found that had Twig's language in it was main plot writing. The first new phrase we see appears in a symbolistic drawing, where in a cloud in the background, we see the written words, "The Almighty." Stacking this on top of the king theory, Twig could have been considered a very powerful or almighty by some of his peers, which would explain a bit of this, but we don't have much context for this line, and it's a bit hard to theorize with currently. Maybe in the future we will have more information, however. The next bit was incredibly hard to translate, as Twig's horns and 5-head got in the way of most of it, but from what I could make out, the king theory continues to grow with evidence. We get scattered fragments of words, and I had to do some guesses with a few of them, but from what I think I have a pretty good start. First off, let me try to read what I could decipher. The spill, it actually says spell, sorry. Something by ball, maybe a T. Royal, maybe? It, you, like the literal just letter U, and seer/gear. Alright, I think I got it. I touched on this translation briefly from my first theory video, but now we're going to dig a bit deeper into it. I had mentioned before that I thought I had gotten the word gear at one point. However, now that I've gained more practice with the language, it looks like it could be an S or a G. So from that, we get the words seer and gear. For you uneducated folks, sear means to basically blast something quickly with heat to cook or brown it. I have had an idea for what that could mean. Religious sort of if you know you know. I'm not specifying because this channel is family friendly. But with the word gear comes the intrigue of the Clockmaster. And if you want a more deep dive into what that could mean, go check out my first Otherside video. The link's in the description. The other word that gives even more evidence to the king theory is royal. At least I think that's the word. If it's not, you can ignore everything I'm about to say. Keeping the theory that someone other than the blood gods were writing this, it would make sense for whoever wrote that to refer to a king or ruler as a royal. And Twig was called a king in the previous short I covered. Could this just be more evidence that Twig was possibly the ruler of all blood gods? Or am I blind and missing something else? Because I swear I looked in every part of the website and YouTube page. Continuing on from this, we now have the shop page on Adam Apple's website. Some of the words I deciphered were just straight up references to random things or didn't even make sense, like this one. E. But the things that actually mattered to the lore mattered a bit too much. First off, we have the word sorrow. Then we've got fear, you, reborn, and free pista? What is that? What is... It's a wine information system? Pista refers to either a digital platform for wine nutrition label. The platform founded by Hans creates QR codes for winemakers to display. Alright, did you intentionally mean to spell it that way? Did he intentionally mean to spell it that way? Okay, I checked again because I was like, okay, that cannot be right. And apparently, the symbol he drew for the T doesn't exist. I think he was trying to write a Z, but he forgot the last little triangle above the full symbol, and so I read it as a T when I was translating. That was a fun journey, I guess. Alright, ignore the last one. I don't think that means anything lore-wise. But back to the ones that matter. Sorrow, fear, and reborn. I was going to include you, but that could literally mean anything, so I'm giving it the boot for now. The word reborn has appeared before in a video titled Biggest Writing Mistake. I can't really tell which characters are on the page from mere age of them. Reborn can imply many different things, such as reincarnation and everlasting things, and if we tie this in vaguely with the king theory, it could mean that a blood god was reborn as George, possibly a blood god that was the original ruler before Twig supposedly took over. This would also explain the crown on George's head in the peak drawing. This theory is a bit far-fetched, but still immensely possible with everything we've already gathered. Next, sorrow and fear. These are common terms used in angst or trauma, and also bad guys in two specific Roblox games. Sorrow could imply that someone in the story is distressed or very strongly sad, and fear could imply that someone in the story is incredibly paranoid or scared of something else. I can't match these terms up with anyone specific at the moment because it is very vague and generic and I have no context for them. But if I find anything else, I'll let you guys know soon. Apart from all the actual lore, there are some nods to the interests of the actual creator. Like one thing translating to AC/DC, a very popular band that Adam Appelt himself has expressed liking strongly. There's also one that's just hello, and for some reason I found that very wholesome amidst all the lore. I am currently unable to access Adam Appelt's Tumblr page or the Otherside community on Tumblr, so if there's anything there that isn't on his website or YouTube page that I missed, let me know in the comments. And if Adam Appelt's watching this, I will be so happy that you saw this one too, because that's actual dedication to my little theories. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go draw some clock twig before I spontaneously combust. So long, and stay so spendy. Yes, I ship clock twig, please don't hurt me.